Well, the biggest piece of advice I would have is realizing and accepting that every single person has a story. They may be perfect looking on the outside, may have the perfect position, but you never really know where someone came from. You never really know what someone has been through, and it's very likely that they've been in similar situations. Acknowledging that and moving forward, and the more self-aware you can be about opportunities to grow on, the better you will end up. So I would say self-recognition and owning your cards. You're dealt this poker hand, you can play them, or what's the alternative?
Today's podcast guest gives us advice like the world doesn't owe you anything. This coming from someone who grew up in a small town, who was emancipated by the age of 16, who was couch surfing just to put herself through high school, to put herself through college, to begin working in what some might describe as a man's world. She started out working in the coal mines and then later moving into the automotive world. She says that whatever cards you're dealt, that you should own them, that you should learn from them, that you should grow from them, that you should work beyond them, that whatever you're going through right now, that this too shall pass. Today we get to learn from AGC member, TGK Automotive shop owner, Megan Stebbing. My name's Travis Sims, and I am the founder and CEO of AGC Accelerated Global Connections. And this is the AGC Experience.
Our lives are a series of choices. Each choice leads to a result. Would you like to easily know which choices are the right life choices for you? If you've never met Amy Tyson, owner of Infinity Life Design, make it a priority to connect with her. Amy is a master of feng shui and batzi, which she calls destiny analysis. She assists her clients in understanding the hidden forces that are influencing their lives. A destiny reading with Amy is like reading a book all about you. She highlights which decisions will bring you to your fullest potential and which choices will lead you down a path of obstacles. If you're struggling with a challenge or you want to lift your life even higher, get connected with Amy and Infinity Life Design on Facebook.com/InfinityLifeDesign or subscribe to her online newsletter at InfinityLifeDesign.com and connect with your infinite life.
I'm excited for today's guest on the AGC Experience podcast show. I'm sitting here with my friend Megan Stebbing with TGK Automotive. And Megan, you and I, we've got to know each other through business networking to start our relationship. We've developed into friends over time. I've met your husband. I've been into your shop. You've repaired my car. And I just wanted to share you with our AGC Experience audience and let them learn a little bit about you. You're an AGC member. And I just think you have an awesome story. So tell us a little bit about you and your business and share.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be a part of this podcast and this growing community, AGC.
Thank you.
You've done a fantastic job. I am originally from West Virginia, and I moved over to Minnesota about 9 years ago. And just about a year and a half, 2 years, I joined the family with TGK Automotive. And we are a full-service automotive repair company. We currently have 8 locations throughout the metro, and we are in growth mode. So it is a super exciting time to be a part of a small family-oriented company that's just done something right, and it's been able to expand and grow, and I get to be a big part of it as their business development and marketing manager.
Oh, that's awesome. And I find that interesting because it's not often that you find a lot of women in this industry. So how did you get broke into it?
So I can just be very transparent here. In my most recent position I was an account executive with Comcast Business. I was interviewing for enterprise roles, And again, just to be transparent, I found that I, for whatever reason it was, didn't seem to have the credibility Mel had when it came to talking with C-level executives. I don't know if it's my accent or my blonde hair or what have you. And not to mention, it's nothing that I loved. All I knew was that I wanted to be successful. And I decided to try to concentrate my efforts in things that I was successful in sales beforehand. One of my first selling jobs or opportunities was with a coal mining company. So in the coal mines, I was selling fire retardant uniforms and rugs and mats, things that they have to have in order to be successful and to be OSHA regulated. And it's considered blue collar. I loved it. I loved the men. I made money. I was successful, and I decided that I should venture back into those types of routes where I knew I would be successful and I would be able to help people who I really cared about.
Yeah. Coal mining. That's a different industry. It's not one that I hear often, especially in Minnesota, where we're recording at today. So background in coal mining, how did you find your way there? And where were you living at the time? And how long did you do that? And what's that part of your history?
You probably didn't even know this part. So, with being said that I'm from West Virginia, I'm from the very bottom of West Virginia where it's always cloudy, the sun never shines, there's coal dust on everything, coal dust on all the storefronts, there's coal dust on your car. And eventually we moved to more of a suburb type area whenever I was in high school, but that is the main way of living for individuals in that area of town. So if you can get into coal mining some way, somehow, you know that you're going to be able to have a job and an opportunity. And so I started out in the textile industry as customer service representative. So when a guy calls in and he's missing his pants, I'd have to track down his pants, or somebody needs mats delivered, I would make sure that happened. And then I was going, above and beyond to take care of these people. And that's when I decided, well, why shouldn't I be able to make a career out of providing it as well?
We share a little bit in common when it comes to this. I came from Bedford, Indiana. That's my small little country town in southern Indiana. And it's a limestone mining community. And all of the major monuments and huge buildings in Washington were made out of Bedford limestone. And so it's a huge mining community, but difference between coal and limestone. But it very small country. Is the area that you grew up in is also small, like country, small, or was it great big manufacturing?
Um, these coal mines are monumental. There was no manufacturing involved, but the area and the mills and all of the equipment is gigantic. So if you were to drive by in the night, you would see lights and you would think it was a roller coaster, but it's actually the coal being hauled away and sifted and then put into specific spots to be then taken somewhere. So there wasn't anything necessarily like a facility. But in regard to the landscaping, it was huge. And even more ironic is you would go to these sites and there would be all of these trucks and there would be nothing but land. And it's because everybody's under it in the ground working. So I was able to take tours and go down and see what it looked like, and size guys for the uniforms. And they had to have them anyway. It was the most perfect sales job you could have.
Awesome. One of the things that I also know about you is that you came from very humble beginnings, and a lot of your success has been based upon your, if I can use this term, grit to make it through something. And if you're willing, I'd love for you to share, because I know just from talking to you a little bit that like you put yourself through college and you even maybe partial to high school. Help refresh my memory a little bit. Just where did you begin? How did you get started before we get into the auto mechanics and all that?
So that is a story. So I got emancipated when I was about 16 years old. And at that point, I was in high school. So I would go to school, and I was in extracurricular activities, but then decided to stop pursuing those. And I worked at various jobs. I just recently did a presentation in one of my networking groups about myself, and the first slide is a slide with about 30 different logos, ranging from Great American Cookie Company to different banks to just various different Subway types of organizations, mostly food. And it was all the jobs that I had growing up. And it's not necessarily where it was burn and turn. It was I was working 1, 2, sometimes 3 at a time. And it would vary, like Christmas time during the seasons. I would do things remembered for the engraving and the presents, and then walk over in the mall to Great American Cookie Company where I was the manager, and just stayed afloat. Had a townhouse. I always had roommates, so obviously that helps offset costs. The biggest, I guess, the largest hurdles being that age and that time was, we're all young and we think we're invincible. So I had tons of car accidents and trying to figure out how to pay for those and what part I was going to duct tape to what part of the car. It was always interesting. But then after high school, I knew that I wanted to be in some type of psychology. I was a teenager who had some personal issues, and I wanted to be able to help individuals like myself. So I did go to school. I pursued a psychology degree, but I also ended up with a sociology degree as well. And shortly after graduating there, I started social work. But I'm not the type that you have to be a very, very special person to be involved in that type of industry. You need to know what you can take home and what you can't emotionally. And unfortunately, I'm just not one of those individuals that's qualified to separate those things. So long story said, that's when I pursued that customer service job right outside of college.
So you came from small community, mining community, emancipated at 16. Lots of jobs, couch surfing, putting yourself through college. A lot of people your age would have just maybe either given up or not pursued a big of dreams, or thought, this is the best that I'm ever going to have is what I have today. But what I love about you is that you pushed through those hard times. You continued to just grow personally and professionally into the successful business owner, wife, mother that you are here today. And so what advice do you have for people either just starting out, maybe they're going to college, maybe they're not going to college, maybe they're trying to figure out what their career is going to be, or they've chosen a career that isn't exactly fitting to them? What's your biggest piece of advice to them?
Well, the biggest piece of advice I would have is realizing and accepting that every single person has a story. They may be perfect looking on the outside, may have the perfect position, but you never really know where someone came from. You never really know what someone has been through, and it's very likely that they've been in similar situations. Acknowledging that and moving forward is number one. I feel that a lot of people kind of have their hand out. What does the world owe me? The world doesn't really owe you anything. And the more self-aware you can be about opportunities to grow on, the better you will end up. So I would say self-recognition and owning your cards. You're dealt this poker hand. You can play them. Or what's the alternative?
Yeah, you're so right. There are many people that they think, oh my gosh, life dealt me a bad hand. And this is it. This is all that's ever going to come from me. And I love how you said, own your cards. And that means like, you know what, I may have came from this. This might be where I'm at today, but that's not where I'm going to be stuck tomorrow. There is something better, and as long as you have the drive to really just keep moving ahead, it all comes down to drive and grit. And I watched a AGC talk recently, and the speaker shared with us that think about the things that you've overcame in your life, right? So today may not be as bad as the things you've already overcome. You will get through this also. And I think that's so important, especially as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as salespeople. We sometimes get stuck. And a lot of times it's our own limiting beliefs. It's our own way of thinking. And we just have to get beyond those and know that what we're driving towards is really possible.
This too shall pass.
Yes.
I think of that all the time. I think of, again, transparency is key. I didn't have the best of mornings. I think we communicated a little bit on that beforehand. But it's something a year from now I'm never going to think of. I can sit and I can dwell about it, or I could just say, this too shall pass, and we will move forward and keep going. And you are what you make it. Bottom line.
Yeah. So let's move ahead to Megan Stebbing today. And I know I alluded this earlier, parent, wife, business owner, successful person. You lead in the organizations that you participate in. And so I know you broke into the automotive region doing sales, but now you and your husband, you own your own shop in Maplewood. And so your husband is not only an owner, but also a mechanic there as well. And so what are you learning going from being in sales to being an owner?
So connecting the dots, essentially. With this company, so to back up a little bit, when I met my husband, when I first moved here, he was a mechanic at TGK, so about 9 years ago. And he's been a mechanic off and on for TGK Automotive back when the company's 13 years old. And they started in a little 3-bay shop in Hugo, and he was one of the technicians there.
Okay.
And so I would mention that I was in a role with Comcast Business. Well, Troy, the name TGK represents Troy Gregory Kaplan. And so you can tell by the name choice that he probably never intended to go to multiple locations. So This is a huge testament to him. But every time he would acquire a new location, he would call me and say, hey, I need my Comcast hooked up, phone, internet, what have you, TV. And I was noticing there were more and more and more of these. And we weren't close as friends or anything like that. But when we'll call it late quarter life crisis, when I realized that corporate world was a bit soul-sucking for myself, I looked at this company and I saw that they were growing, and possibly so some cohesion would be appreciated. I didn't really know what I was getting into. And so I reached out to him and we had a meeting, and I was thinking, writing thank you cards, doing all these different things for the company. And he told me flat out, I'm not going to pay somebody a bunch of money to mail thank you cards. I want fleets. I had no earthly idea what I was getting into. I absolutely no idea. And the best part was that everything that I was thinking of that they should be doing, they already were. So that blew my mind. So you have a spouse, you come home and you hear about your spouse's bad day. And, a lot of times it's never their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, that was the same in my household. Here I am thinking, well, maybe Troy should be doing this, maybe Troy should be doing that. But when it comes down to it, maybe my husband was having a bad day, because this guy is a genius. He's the quietest person in the room, but when you get to talk to him one-on-one, you learn so much about not only the automotive industry, but about business in itself. And so I got to come on board. It was the last day I was getting ready to accept another position, and he texted me that night and said that it was a go. I believe that was it March 20th? And so we got started diving in. He wanted fleet companies, and so him not being necessarily in the sales background And me being in sales background, we were able to collaborate on how we were going to target this market, which in turn led to, again, me knowing sales. With sales, it's all about tracking your numbers. And basically, if you put the math into perspective, you know exactly how many phone calls to make that day to know what you're going to produce later on. And again, that was something that he always wanted to do, but could never figure out exactly how to do it. So, long story short, we were able to go really far with not only the sales piece, but also the marketing piece. So our SEO, just with Google, has increased about 333% over the last year. And that's from me Googling how to get Googled, essentially.
Sure.
And so it's been so fun to be able to be an asset to a company and to be allowed to be creative and for somebody to value the things that you say and the input that you give. So that's kind of how the marketing piece came into play. It was never on my job description per se. And so with the location in Maplewood, I was at a training for SEO in North Carolina. And we were having some issues with the current owners. They weren't, it's nothing negative. They were just more in retirement mode. And him and I both thought that this is a gold mine of a location. It's on the 3M campus. It's the only one there. And we just saw so much more opportunity. So my husband and I told Troy, I was like, well, I wouldn't be in sales or an entrepreneur if I didn't just kind of throw this out there. It was on a random phone call, and I guess he let it marinate, and we decided to move forward with it. So we have now co-owned that since April. And to clarify, each location it's not a franchise model, but it's an owner-operator model. So each location is owned 51% by TGK Automotive, and then the 49% by the current owner-operator, which would be, in this case, my husband and I.
I think that's a great model. And I'll tell you, that's actually the exact model that I've chosen for AGC. And because I looked at the cost and the time and the attorneys and all the things that it would take to do franchising, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would take so much to do. And then I looked at, licensing, but the problem with licensing is you lose control of the brand, and you can't tell people how to do it, when to do it, exactly how to do it. You just have to give them the stuff and hope they do it. And so I chose that same model, doing like a regional partnership for AGC, so that we're mutually invested in the success of this endeavor. And so I love that, and I think that's fantastic. And I've got to know you and Joe, and I've actually brought my vehicle to your shop, and you've done some work for me. And what I love about the combo between the two of you is that you care about your customers. I mean, you care about them and what it is they need to do. You work with them. Joe gave me advice on, okay, you've got these 3 things that you need to look at your vehicle. This one needs done today. Like you got to get this one done now. But these other 2 things, it's not detrimental that it gets done today. So if you need to save for this one or save for that one, then you steered me in a direction that was comfortable for me, the customer, which was awesome. And I don't think all mechanic shops operate that way. And I also know that if you were broke down on the road today, your immediate anxiety is that I've got this issue, and I've got to take it somewhere. And if there's no trust, then you just feel completely vulnerable. And so I love that you have this family organization built on a great reputation with great people.
That is by far how single-handedly how I feel that we have been able to grow from one location with 3 shops. Now that one location is sold, but rebuilt into this giant location with a golf simulator upstairs. I believe it's 12 bays. It's a phenomenal location. It's so funny because you can tell by the type of clientele we're starting to get there. We had a bad Google review because we didn't offer the particular sparkling water that the client wanted. So it's like, anyway, long story short, we're growing so fast. And this is by far one of my favorite things to talk about because something, again, I don't feel that I've shared is my grandfather. I call him my papa. He passed away about 4 years ago, and he was my father, basically. I would be out there spit shining rotors with him. He was a mechanic. He was a diesel mechanic. And so I had a natural, you don't ever realize how innately you can, or naturally you can love something, even though when you don't know it. And it's just because it's been a piece of him. So it every day gives me warm fuzzies to be involved with the type of industry that I'm in. But our business model is like no other automotive company. I've yet to hear or know of an automotive company who operates like this. And again, I attribute that to our growth. Unfortunately, we're in an honest or unhonest industry, and that's just the situation. So we take it on full force by being as transparent as possible. What that means on our end is that 99% of automotive companies are commission based. So I'm in sales, I'm not commission based. Our frontline, our service advisors, they do not make commission on what they're advising you on what your vehicle needs. Furthermore, our mechanics are not making commission on the hours that they bill out on your vehicle. So every employee is salary or hourly paid. So there is no incentive for someone to sell you something that you don't need. So what we do provide are called digital inspections. So we want you to be able to see full frontal what the mechanic sees. So we do, the technicians use their cell phones, they use their iPads, and so we do a 100-point inspection, 99-point inspection on every vehicle that comes in. Take pictures of the fluid trays. Here's a little tidbit. One thing that tends to get upsold quite a bit is brake pads, because it's a super easy job and it's a big markup. So we actually take pictures of the brake pads against the millimeter tool to show you whether or not you have life left on your brake pads. And then some people view it like a laundry list, but that's actually not what we're giving you. When we give you the inspection, we're giving you green, what's good to go, perfect condition, orange, hey, like you mentioned, 6 months, you might want to go ahead and prep for this because automotive costs are not inexpensive. They're expensive. We're working with some organizations right now who are in transition, meaning on their way to homelessness or not. And some of it is because of their vehicle or unexpected payments. And these types of individuals are already paying the high credited types of car organizations like the car hobs or what have you, because their credit's not the best. So, and then we will give you red. Red would be a safety precaution. This is something that we do recommend you take care of today. Never are you said, I get the strangest questions. Well, if I take it in, are they going to hold my car if I don't want to get it fixed? Absolutely not. This is your car. We will fix what you want on that car. And it brings me back to a sad place because unfortunately, as a young female teenager, those types of things happen to me all the time. And so I love being a part of a company where I am selling the company because I know it's the best fit, not because that's the promotion I'm getting paid for that month.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think you just batted it out of the park. You just hit home with so many reservations that everyone has about coming to any automotive store or shop or mechanic or wherever you're taking your car. All those reservations, all those insecurities, all those anxieties around what's going to take place. And I love I made a note here of the non-commissioned people in the room. I think that really sets your company aside. Allows people to know that the person behind that counter, the person in that bay that's advising you is not triggered to upsell you in some way. I think that's brilliant. I think it's a great business model, and it says a lot about the organization, the reputation that you're building. So.
Definitely. LeFleur is a fleet customer of mine. They're the IT and printing type company in Bloomington that's been local. And he was he's probably the largest fleet that I personally have brought on alone. And he used to go to a competitor, and he said that he loves being able to call and talk to the same person because there's no turnover, because we keep our employees happy. We know when there's like this hiring epidemic coming, we proactively gave everybody raises to make sure they were happy. No one was going anywhere. And he said that he would call the competitor every single time he was being pitched a new sale. And he's like, I've been in this industry for 26 years. I don't need somebody selling me every single phone call I make. And so, again, it's just, it's a great atmosphere to be around and in.
Yeah. I think every person, I have often thought this, that every person growing up should have to do some type of just work on a farm, or work in a mine, or work beside their papaw and help them change brakes or something like that, so they understand the value of hard work. I grew up in a family that was a middle-class family, lots of kids, and so really had to stretch every dollar that there was. And my dad, my grandparents, my uncles, my mother, my aunts taught me a work ethic. And it was because I watched my dad growing up as running a lawn care business, and he would work all day with people half his age. He would then go into the garage at night and sharpen blades and grease tractors and all that stuff, getting it ready for the next day while everyone else was home resting. Then I watched my mom pore over the books at the table and make out the routes and handle the payroll and all this stuff. And it gave me a real lesson on what it takes to be a business owner, someone invested in their own success. And I think the things that you've shared here today reinforce all those things that I learned growing up, that you learned, and it just shows the grit that it takes to make it. And so I just want to say thank you, first of all, for sharing your story, for sharing how you came up in the world and the challenges that you've overcome. And I'm just curious too, where are you going from here? Because if I know you, and I know you well, is that you have some goals for TGK. You have some goals for your own shop, the one that you and your husband share. What's the vision?
Well, I had joked with Troy that I want my own shop so I can show my husband how it's done.
Oh, that's awesome.
Since he's running his. But also, we're growing so much. I actually just brought on an assistant because even though I want to take everything in and do everything, I'm understanding that that's all not possible. So I'm really looking forward to how she is going to help us grow as well, with having a different skill set than I do. And we're in acquisition mode. So I know that we'll be at location number 9 in January. And I believe we're looking at another location up north. So it's hard to tell where we will be at the end of 2020 in regard to the growth that we've seen in 2019. And I couldn't be more excited. If anybody is blessed in this situation, it's me to have this opportunity.
Awesome. Expansion all the way, just continue to grow and serve more families. That's fantastic. If someone's watching or listening on today's podcast and they want to know how to reach you, whether that's at your Maplewood location or just how to get in touch with TGK wherever they are and find a location near them, how do we find you? How do we get in touch?
Well, we have social media pages for all of our locations, so location specific, but first and foremost, our website is easily attainable at tgkauto.com. And from there, you can look at the things that we're doing in the community. You can reference any of our locations. You can schedule online. You can even give us a call, of course. And then we chat with our social media pages as well. So I would suggest tgkauto.com will be the main place to go.
All right. Awesome. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing with our audience. Appreciate you. It's been a pleasure to sit down with you. And then if you're watching or listening at home, I want to say thank you for tuning in today and learning more about Megan Stebbing and her story and where she came from, where she's at today. If you enjoyed today's story, remember every Monday our podcast drops, and it's getting more local businesses out into the world, and so we can hear where they came from and what their success level is and what advice they have for us. So tune in and share with others.
This podcast was produced by Elation Studios. Go to www.elationstudios.co to learn more. Elation Studios. Discover your voice, clarify your vision, build your life.